Hey guys, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name is Claire Holiday and I'm a fantasy author seeking traditional publishing. Speaking of traditional publishing, I thought it would be fun now that we're halfway through the year 2025 that we go through the latest fantasy big releases of 2025. So those that have already been released, that were the most hyped, and those that still have yet to be released. The way I have this set up, it's like the big books that we've all been anticipating, and then books that I personally am most interested in, and then books that I thought were just cool based off cover. So I have some vague categories. I'll have the chapters list down below. I haven't read any of these yet. I have been so slow to getting to new releases because I have such a back catalog. So if you have read any of these titles, let me know if it's worth seeking out. That's kind of what I'm using this video as a way to springboard, like, this is what I'm interested in, then you guys can tell me if it's worth the while. So I'm gonna start with the big author, big name releases. And I'm gonna start with the one that I am most anticipating and most definitely going to start reading before the end of the year, and that is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. In case you don't know, I'm a big Joe Abercrombie fan. I've done several book reviews of him. I'm currently listening to A Little Hatred. I know I'm 5 years late, but I am finally listening to it and it's incredible. I've heard nothing but amazing things about The Devils. So we got fantasy and horror as like the top genres for it. Holy work sometimes require unholy deeds. Side note, I'm renovating my house and this corner is the only not wrecked part of my place right now. Anyway, Joe Abercrombie, The Devils. Brother Diaz has been summoned to the sacred city where he is certain a grand holy assignment awaits him, but a new flock is made up of unrepentant murderers, practitioners of ghastly magic, and outright monsters, and the mission he is tasked with will require bloody measures from them all in order to achieve its righteous end. So I like that there's clearly like religious undertones, or not really undertones, pretty overt. We got people that perform magic, we have monsters. So, and I just love Joe Abercrombie. I trust him and his writing. Little Hatred, I will definitely put out a review about that, but it has reminded me that this man is a master at the craft. So it almost doesn't even matter what it's about because his writing is just that good. Then we have, I think, one of the most anticipated books of the year, Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. It's a Hunger Games novel. So there was, what was it, Songbirds and Snakes, and that was a prequel. I'm not a huge Hunger Games person. Let's just put that out there right now. I have like kind of a fondness for the series because I was a teenager when all the movies were coming out and the books were coming out and stuff, but my mom was into it, I had friends that were into it, I never got that into it. I'm just not that into like kind of post-apocalyptic, I don't know. And Songbirds and Snakes, here's the thing, I saw the movie, loved the movie, loved the movie. The main actor that played Snow, incredible, loved him so much. So this is about Haymitch, which was a fan favorite character in the original Hunger Games. So this is like when he was younger, in his 20s, but it sounds like it's just like another Hunger Games. So the interesting thing about that really blew me away about Songbirds and Snakes was that the structure was so different. They still had a Hunger Games, but then there was just so much more to the world, into the story, into the characters that went beyond that. But when I read what it's about, it seems to me District 12, people are taken to the games and they have to fight. That part just kind of bores me personally. But let me know if you're really into it, if this was a really good one, if it had a Songbirds and Snakes, you know, twist. Because the structure of that story, I think, was the most interesting part because we were all so used to the Hunger Games and became so popular, and even if you weren't super into it like I wasn't, you still kind of understand what was supposed to happen, how these stories are supposed to go. So Songbirds and Snakes, like deviating from that is what made it so interesting. So if Sunrise on the Reaping has a similar vibe, I could be convinced. I could also wait until the movie comes out. Okay, then we have CATABASIS by R.F. Kuang. You know, this sounds kind of interesting. I like that there's a dark academia vibe to it. I have not read Babel by this author, and that's what I'm far more interested because I like that Babel also has to do with language. I'm very interested in incorporating language in fantasy. That has always been a fascination of mine, those two concepts coming together. Two graduate students must set aside their rivalry and journey to hell to save their professor's soul, perhaps at the cost of their own. So like kind of an interesting premise, but like I said, I'm definitely going to reserve Babel as the first book I read from this author. But let me see, it's expected in August, in late August. So it will be interesting. Maybe this one will get better reviews or more hype. Babel really blew up last year or the year before, whenever it came out. It's interesting, even the cover has a similar vibe. I'm not getting the sense that that's necessarily in the same world, but clearly this author likes mixing that dark academia. And this, I know Babel also took place in a school, so she really likes that sort of setting, but mixed with fantasy elements, and I respect that. I like people that have like their thing that like draws them into fiction. I'll just throw out here Isles of EMBERDARK, a Brandon Sanderson Cosmere book. I've read a decent amount of Brandon Sanderson. There's still plenty that I could get into. Isles of EMBERDARK, you know, it says under genres that it is a high fantasy dragon sci-fi. Trying to read this, I'm like, I don't know what this is about. So let me know, do I have to read other books in the Cosmere for Isles of EMBERDARK to make sense? Or is this a standalone? It's not saying that it's a part of a series. It's not saying that it's like a prequel or a sequel to anything in particular, but from reading the description, it kind of sounds like there's maybe other books in the Cosmere that I need to tackle first before getting to this guy. And which one? Which ones do I need to tackle before I get to Isles of EMBERDARK? I like that's a dragon thing. That's very cool. And then V.E. Schwab is coming out with Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. That sounds like a song lyric. That's beautiful. And V.E. Schwab, I've never quite been able to get obsessed with her, but I respect her. And this sounds like a very interesting premise. There's different timelines that these stories take place. So 1532, 1827, 2019, and in different places. We have Santo Domingo de la Calzada, London and Boston, and three different women. And the way the blurb is set up, it's like, this is a story about hunger, this is a story about love, this is a story about rage. The way the blurb is set up very much intrigues me. I think sometimes my issue with V.E. Schwab is that their concepts are always so interesting, and then sometimes it feels a little dry. But if you've read this book, 'cause I don't think it has come out yet, if you've read it and it's good, let me know, because everything from the title to this blurb, I'm like, I kind of feel it. It sounds kind of good. My next section is Romantasy equals fantasy, because you cannot throw a rock without it hitting a romantasy novel in the fantasy genre. And listen, I'm not immune. I love Sarah J. Maas. I'm reading Fourth Wing right now, so I figured I'd throw in the ones that looked interesting to me. And what always gets me is a retelling. I'm such a sucker for retellings. This is a Snow White retelling. Snow White never, I feel like, gets as much love as like a Beauty and the Beast, but I love Snow White. That is like my fairy tale jam. So this one sounded cool. Hemlock in Silver by T. Kingfisher. Kingfisher? What a great name. That's cast to be a pen name. That's really good. But basically this woman is an herbalist and deals with poisons, and then the king reaches out to her because his daughter Snow is dying, or nothing seems to work, that is, until she finds a secret world hidden inside a magic mirror. This dark realm may hold the key to what makes Snow sick. So I love that. I like that it's a retelling, but Snow White isn't the main character. She's a side character, and we have this other like interesting female character. You know, this says it's a romantasy, but I'm not entirely clear what the romance part is, actually. I didn't put that together until now. And it says, yeah, retelling, horror, romance, fairy tale. So I wonder if this is like between the herbalist and Snow, if this is a lesbian fantasy, or if there is just this other element that they didn't have time to put in the blurb. Interesting. This one by Rachel Gilling. This was a cover that got me. This cover is sick. The Night and the Moth, also kind of a great title, kind of a great romantasy title. The Night and the I gotta read more of this blurb than I have others because it sounds so interesting. Sybil is the main character. She is a foundling girl who traded a decade of service for a home in the Great Cathedral. In her dream, she receives visions from 6 unearthly figures known as omens. How freaking cool. From them, she can predict terrible things before they occur, and lords and common folk alike travel across the kingdom to learn their futures by her dreams. Well, that's just a cool premise in general. And then you have that some of her diviners are getting killed off. A mysterious knight arrives at the cathedral. Rude, heretical, and devilishly handsome. The knight has no respect for Sybil's visions, but they have to link up to try to figure out who's killing off her like fellow sisters. Kind of a really cool premise, right? I love that it takes place in a cathedral. I love, again, this like religious undertone throughout. I love the idea of like a heretical knight and then this like kind of pious girl plagued with horrible dreams. It just seems like a really cool world and a cool backdrop for romance. It definitely seems like a hate to love. Very interested, keeping my eye on this one for sure. Upon the Starlit Tide by Kell Woods. This one is definitely like a girly romance. It says that it's a fairy tale inspired historical fantasy combining elements of The Little Mermaid and Cinderella into a wholly original tale of love, power, and betrayal. And it takes place in Brittany. 1758. That's also kind of an unusual setting, so I really liked that. Love the cover so much. And just the combination, like if we're gonna do a retelling combining different very, very well-known fairy tales like The Little Mermaid and Cinderella, kind of cool to put them together. I'm not as hyped for this one, but it could be, I am a sucker for like mermaid seaside books. You know, that description kind of reminds me of when I read this one, To Kill a Kingdom, or that other seaside book, 12 Dancing Princesses, or based off of 12 Dancing Princesses. I'll put the cover right here. I like those kind of like moody, gothic, seaside, fairy tale retellings. Kind of feels like that vibe. I'm not sure it's necessarily gothic or like horror. This one, okay. I mostly looked at Goodreads when I was like figuring out the titles for this video. This one I went on Amazon and I was just so hooked in by it. So While the Dark Remains by Joanna Ruth Meyer. It is like wintry. An icebound palace of magic and menace, a young woman plots to outwit a cruel king in a bracing fantasy about love, found family, and immeasurable revenge. Sick, I love that. Brynja spent her childhood as a captive performer in the imposing mountain palace, and every night she risked death for the king's entertainment until his rebellious son helped her escape. Now 20, Brynja has never forgotten the brutal king or forgiven him. Under the cloak of a 3-month-long winter dark, Brynja is returning for revenge. Also, like, just a cool romantasy premise, or just general book premise. A trend that I noticed in fantasy that is coming out and at least getting hyped that I can find based off of Goodreads and all of that is SAPHIRIC reads, as in lesbian-centered fantasy books. I just felt like I was finding one after another, after another, after another. Like, has it been like this for a while? Or is it this year, 2025 specifically, that they're all just kind of coming out? So the first one that I'm mentioning is also based off the cover, even though it's a little AI looking in a way that I don't love, but also I find beautiful. The Treachery of Swans. So an enthralling sapphic retelling of Swan Lake. Magic has long been outlawed, and Ollie has always known she'd be the one to restore it. So basically, it is a baddie preparing for a heist of a lifetime by impersonating the princess in order to restore magic to the realm. But when she goes to the palace, the king dies, and then she and the actual princess need to work together to unravel the murder and all of that jazz. So it kind of seems fun. Oh, by A.B. Poranek. By the way, didn't say the author. Oh, yikes. And these ones, I'm just gonna list off the titles of a few. We have Emily Tesh's The Incandescent, which also has a dark academia vibe. A SAPHIRIC dark academia fantasy. We have Tarnished by Erica Rose Eberhardt, as outlawed magic, a hidden curse, and a love tested by fire. And then we have Brighter Than Scale, Swifter Than Flame by Neon Yang. This one has probably caught my eye the most because it's about dragons. And also I think technically, yeah, a novella. A new queer Asian-inspired fantasy novella about a renowned dragon slayer who never takes her armor off in public. That's cool. The fiercely independent nation of Quembio is isolated, reclusive, and something of a mystery to the rest of the world. It's rumored that out there, dragons are not feared as in right and proper, but instead loved and worshipped. Yiva is perhaps a strange emissary to these people, not only because their face has never been seen in public, but because they are a hero born to a birthright that makes them suited for the task, hunting dragons. So next I want to talk about some books that I pulled out. I'm going to be honest, this was purely based off covers, these next few books that I'm talking about, based off of epic world building. So we have The Witch Roads by Kate Elliott. What I really liked about this cover is that it kind of looks like a bunch of D&D characters, and they're all like part animal. So I was like, wow, well that's the most fantasy looking thing I've seen in a minute. And it's a duology, so kind of cool to have something that feels so epic and have it down to only 2 books. Status is hereditary, class is bestowed, trust must be earned. Next, and this is an epic high fantasy but also romance, The Floating World by Axio. This is Final Fantasy meets Shadow and Bone. I mean, that's pretty cool. In this romantic fantasy reimagining of the Korean legend of celestial maidens. I've never heard of that, so I don't know what that means, and I'm very sold on the premise of Final Fantasy meets Shadow and Bone. Please let me know if you've read this one, actually. We have a guy that lives in the underworld, we got a girl who is cheerful and spirited acrobat traveling with her adoptive family and performing at villages. I love when a fantasy character is a performer. Maybe because I relate. There's monsters, there's demons, there's something very Treasure Planet about the description and the cover. This one, okay, I'm probably the least interested in what I'm about to tell you guys, but I wanted to tell you because what it reminds me of is Name of the Wind. I'm not a Name of the Wind girly. I actually have a lot of opinions about Name of the Wind and they're not very positive. However, a lot of people, especially if you love fantasy, it's like you grew up and are obsessed with Name of the Wind, and this sort of gives me that vibe. So we have Soul of the Warrior, Child Soldier by Kyphe. Kyphe. Ryven has a secret. Not only does he have memories of his past life, but this ability to acquire stats and skills is unparalleled. Conscripted to fight against an orc horde before unlocking a class, he needs to be extraordinary to survive. The Count is throwing child soldiers against the incoming horde to blunt the assault, knowing that most of them will be chewed up and spat out. Can Ryven survive? Can Ryven thrive? That's kind of a good description. And like I said, it doesn't immediately call to me, but I think the cover is cool, and I think the description is actually pretty well written, and it has a Name of the Wind feel to me. So if that was your vibe, if that was your thing, I think maybe check this one out. So next up, I have horror and paranormal fantasy, which is one of my favorite like subgenres of the fantasy world. So I have Grey Vampire by Richard Swan. Blood once turned the wheels of the empire, now it's money. A new age of exploration and innovation has dawned, and the Empire of the Wolf stands to take the place as the foremost power in the known world. Glory and riches await. But dark days are coming, a mysterious plague has broken out, there's war coming, there's a strange message by an emperor and 2 heretic monks who claim to have contact with spirits in the afterlife. Listen, it says under genres, it's fantasy, horror, epic fantasy, steampunk. And the cover definitely has a steampunky vibe too. So you just get that there's a lot of stress, a lot of drama, a lot of fantasy, and I like that it says horror. Okay, sorry to change it up on you guys like this, but I'm having tech issues. per usual. But this next book I really wanted to see if you guys have read or have any opinions on, called The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling, because it sounds so good. This is also probably one of my top, like, should I see in the bookstore sooner rather than later, I'd probably grab. A transfixing fever dream of medieval horror following 3 women, a besieged castle that descends ravenously into madness under the spell of mysterious godlike visitors. That sounds incredible! The constant lady and her saints that come and save this castle from being besieged. Then all these like creepy, weird things happen. I like that it's medieval, I like that it's horror, I like that there's religious undertones. Everything about it I find fascinating. However, okay, my one thing is that at least on Goodreads, it only has a 3.75 star rating. So like I said, if you guys have actually read it, let me know if it's worth it. And I think the cover is incredible too. Like, everything about it is appealing to me. So I'm a little surprised that the star rating is as low as it is. So definitely, like, let me know. I wanted to throw out Lightfall by Ed Crocker because it is a vampire novel, and I love vampire novels. They said if you're a fan of Jay Kristoff's Empire of a Vampire, that you'd be into this. So no humans are here, just immortals. Their politics, their feuds, and their long buried secrets. And the part that really intrigued me was that vampires used to rule, and then they got wiped out and survivors filed to the last vampire city of First Light, where the rules are simple. If you're poor, you drink weak blood. If you're nobility, you get the good stuff, and you can never ever leave. And there seems to definitely be a lot of emphasis on class, because it sounds like the main character is a palace maid who's not treated very well. And I like when monsters or magic systems are used to explore things that can be difficult to conceptualize or too on the nose, like class systems. So the next category I wanted to get into was historical fantasy. I got a few in here that I think sound really, really good. The first one by Stephen Graham Jones, The Buffalo Hunter. A chilling historical novel set in the days of the state of Montana, following a Blackfeet Indian named Good Stab as he hunts the field of the Blackfeet Nation looking for justice. I complained about this when I talked about when I saw Child of the Flower Moon. I am so sick of books, movies, media that are about Native people, but then the story basically just shows them dying constantly. Dying, getting killed, tragedy happening to them, blah, 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 blah. Which this does kind of sound like, because it's a revenge fantasy. So I don't love the idea of reading about bad things happening to Native people. It's like, we get it. Bad things happen to them and their history and their people, and it's not fair and it's not right. It's just one of those where reading or watching media about them being exploited and constantly dying, it's like, I understand that's a part of the history, especially more recent-ish history, but that's not all there is to it. There's more going on. Hopefully this leans more in it kind of, like I said, seems like a revenge fantasy, but it's a great cover and a very cool title. If you read it, let me know how it is. This one I think sounds really good. Written on the Dark by Guy Gavriel Kay. A majestic new novel of love and war that brilliantly invokes the drama and turbulence of medieval France. The main character is a tavern poet, familiar with the rogues and shadows of the world, but not at all with courts and power. He is an unlikely person, despite his quickness, to be caught up in deadly contests of ambitious royals, assassins, and invading armies. But then the other interesting point is that he meets his poetic equal, an aristocratic woman, and is drawn to more than one unsettling person with connection to the world beyond this one. So we got like I said, a little bit of paranormal, we got maybe a little tit for tat romance going on. I like that it takes place in medieval France. I've been learning a little bit of French lately, so that place definitely holds an interest for me. And I threw this in because the author is very, very popular. Sylvia Moreno-Garcia, and she did Mexican Gothic, which I feel like you can't throw a stone at a bookstore without hitting Mexican Gothic. I didn't read it. I heard mixed things about it, and it didn't quite seem up my alley, but I threw this in here because I knew it would be really popular and is said to be a horror fantasy historical fiction. Oh, I didn't even say the title. It's called The Bewitching. Back then, when I was a young woman, there were still witches. That was how Nana Albia always began the stories she told her great-granddaughter, Minerva. Stories that have stayed with Minerva all her life. An academic career can be a punishing pursuit, but it might turn outright deadly when witchcraft is involved. Witchy, female-driven, multi-generational, beloved author. So I have no doubt there's a lot of hype around this one. I'm not sure it's out yet. Anyway, so those are the books that have caught my eye for one reason or another. If you have read any of them, do not hesitate to let me know your thoughts. Give your little mini reviews down below. No spoilers for anything, please, but I am eager to hear what you guys have thought, what you're most anticipating, what has been the biggest surprise, the biggest disappointment, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.